It's literally just Mahjong. Today is the day I finally cover a PvP-focused gacha game. Mahjong is a game that mixes both skill and luck. Much like other games that skirt the lines between gambling or not, such as poker, Mahjong sits near the middle, though maybe a bit more on the skill-oriented side. Now I hold my reviews to the highest standards when it comes to identifying the validity and accuracy of its content, and I've scoured the net for new and exotic gacha games to cover. And what did I find? This is coming from someone that platinum Yakuza 0, so you know I had to live through the Mahjong stuff. Now I hear the doubters that this cannot possibly be classified as a gacha game, and there's no conceivable way that Mahjong can be gacha gameplay. However, upon closer inspection, Mahjong Soul appears in the almighty monthly revenue PvP list, and has a cosmetics-based gacha system. Therefore, it is indeed a gacha game and does qualify as content for this channel. I assure you, it is not an excuse for me to talk about Mahjong. Just don't make me play the poker gacha game next. My name is Psyche, and throughout my years playing these silly mobile games, I never thought I'd come across one that has such a steep learning curve. After stumbling my way through the game on and off for a few months, including actively playing through post-game analyses, I feel like I'm no longer a complete beginner. Of course, a couple months is nowhere near enough time to explain the highly intricate designs behind this game where you seemingly just throw tiles away. More importantly, how does it look like when applied as a gacha game? Well, today I will be demonstrating why Mahjong is a game that takes years or maybe even decades to master, and if Mahjong Soul is a good game to get into. Anyways, Mahjong has been a popular tabletop tile-based game for the past 200 years or so. It originated in South China and has been spread to nearby regions, all with their slightly different rule sets. The version I will be referring to in this video is Riichi Mahjong, specifically the version played in Japan. It's worth mentioning that given its many variations, there's actually no concrete rule set, meaning that some rules are not practiced universally across all the Mahjong parlors or online clients. Well, it's not like you can just go back to the Mahjong developers and ask them to clarify. Mahjong Soul is developed by Cat Food Studio and the global version is published by Yostar, a prominent name in gacha games, I'm sure. It first launched in 2018 in China and a year later globally. Previously, you would play this within a browser, but now it's got both a mobile app and a dedicated PC version on Steam. It was a toss-up between this or Riichi City, but I mostly seen people play on this client, and it seemed to be more popular. There's also Tenhole, which I believe is Japan's largest online Mahjong client, but that one isn't a gacha and does not have anime waifus, so it definitely doesn't count as content for this channel. How do you play Mahjong? Well, you will engage in thrilling 4-player PvP matches to form a winning hand of tiles to score the highest points, and your ranking is based on how many points you have at the end of the games. I only played the ranked mode, and I recommend the same thing for the majority of people, since you'll get matched up against other players that are around your skill level. The game is primarily played with 4 players, though 3-player variants do exist, including in Mahjong Soul, just that I only play the 4-player version. Now, explaining the rules of Mahjong is something I will not be able to do well, as this is one of those games where you actually have to sit down and read the rules if you want any hopes of actually understanding it, but I'll briefly summarize it. For the sake of brevity, there are some obscure rules and exceptions to some of the stuff I say, but this is not a Mahjong tutorial, so I'll be explaining it in a way that most people should at least remotely understand how to play. Each player starts with 25,000 points, and points are granted to players that won a hand and taken from players that didn't win. The full game will have multiple rounds, so all the points are tallied at the end, and your final score will either round up or down depending on your placement, where the games at higher ranks will have its point rounding become weighted more to up the stakes. So if you win first place, you'll win more points, and if you're dead last at 4th, you lose more. There are 3 suits of tiles in the game, the Manzu, Pingzu, and Soulzu, all numbered 1 to 9. There's the winds of east, south, west, and north, and finally the dragons of white, green, and red. The winds and the dragons are also referred to as honor tiles. There's 4 copies of each tile. There's the season tiles, but I've never seen those get used in any version of Riichi Mahjong. The tiles are randomly shuffled and stacked in 4 walls in 2 columns. Of course, in online clients like Mahjong Soul, the wall isn't visible for simplicity's sake. When the game starts, every player will draw 13 tiles to form their starting hand. Then, the first player, in this case the dealer, will draw an additional tile and discard one, repeating around the table anti-clockwise. Your goal is to form a winning hand of the 14 tiles, and typically a winning hand is defined by forming melds and a pair. Melds are either sequences of 3 tiles in the same suit in consecutive order, or triplets where you have 3 of the same tiles. The pair is just a pair of any of the same 2 tiles. For example, this would be a winning hand. There are some exceptions to this rule, like 7 pairs, where you have 7 pairs of 7 tiles, making up the 14 tile hand. There's 2 ways to win. You either draw the final winning tile yourself, which is called tsumo, or when another player discards your winning tile, called rong. Winning in either method is referred to as going out. If you win by tsumo, then all the other players will pay you points equal to the value of your hand. If you win by ron, then that single player will pay you the entirety of the hand's value. If another player rons off your tile, this is referred to as dealing in, and it's obviously something you don't want to do. The value of a hand is determined by a lot of factors. Its value calculation is dependent on how many han you have. The more han, the more points. However, to qualify a winning hand, you also need to have something called a yaku. And this is the part that confused me the most when I started. When you hold certain tiles or certain combinations of tiles, you're rewarded han, but not all of these conditions award you with a yaku. Riichi Mahjong has a unique mechanic called Dora, where up to 5 indication tiles outside the game will display tiles that are worth 1 han each when you hold them. However, holding Dora tiles will not grant you a yaku. A hand like this cannot go out. There's a comprehensive list of all the possible yakus in the game, with Mahjong Soul supplying one as well. The most basic one is yakuhai, where as long as you have a triplet of either your seat wind or the round wind, or any of the 3 dragons, then that counts as 1 yaku. So it doesn't matter how garbage your other tiles are. You are allowed to go out with a hand like this. The other beginner-friendly yaku is called tan yao, or all simples in English. Basically, your hand must not contain any honor tiles or terminal tiles, so no 1s and 9s of any suit. This means if you just discard any honors or terminals, then you'd have a 25% win rate. You can ignore the rest of the rules, and that's all you need to get started on playing Mahjong. Now, a 25% win rate obviously doesn't sound very appealing, so there has to be more than that. Riichi Mahjong also has the Riichi mechanic, where if you're 1 tile away from a winning hand, you can call Riichi, or usually just pronounced reach in English. Basically, until the game ends where you go out, your hand is locked and you must discard any tiles you draw that's not a winning tile. Going out on Riichi automatically qualifies as a yaku. This can be a double-edged sword, as it's automatically worth a decent bit of points even if your hand will have no value otherwise. But it also signals to all the players that you're close to winning, causing them to play cautiously not to deal in. When another player discards a tile that can be used to form a triplet, you can call peng, or use that tile to form the triplet, having a display next to your hand for everyone. If the player on your left discards a tile that can be used to form a sequence, then you can call chi, and use that tile to form the sequence and display it on your right. There's also kan, where you form 4 of the same tiles, but this is a bit too complex, so I won't get into that. In any case, doing any of these actions is considered a call, and will open up your hand. When no calls have been made, your hand is considered closed or concealed, as when it's open, you will be disqualified for certain yakus, or some of them will have reduced points. While calling can get you closer to a winning hand, you can't make any adjustments to it, and other players will be able to see what your tile combos that can guess what kind of hand you're going for, so they'll avoid discarding certain tiles to prevent dealing in. If all the tiles have been drawn and no player has won yet, then this is called exhaustive draw. And players that are in tenpai, meaning the state where you're 1 tile away from a winning hand, will be awarded points from those that are not in tenpai. In around 1.5 pages of script, this is the most basic rules of Riichi Mahjong. There's a lot more that goes deeper, but for now, if all I had to do was explain the rules, then why did this video take me a month of actively playing to get out? Saying that becoming a master at Mahjong is hard would be an understatement. Just like some other ancient games like chess, improving at the game can be a lifelong endeavor. At its core, it's a game about statistics, but personal experience can come into play. Learning Mahjong is kind of like learning how to ride a bike. You know how it works after you've learned it, but explaining it to someone from the ground up on how to do it is a bit tricky. I spent like 2 to 3 weeks just reviewing the rule sets and the different hands that you can score. The thing about Mahjong is that you can watch 1,000 tutorials or online guidebooks. But when you actually get into a game yourself, you kinda just blank out and realize how many mistakes you're making. There's technically no time limit to make your play, but online clients will have a timer so you can't just sit there and go AFK. While there is a beginner tutorial in-game that teaches you the absolute basics, there's no advanced lessons teaching you about tile efficiency and how to form your hand as the game progresses. In addition to knowing all the yakus in the game, you kinda have to just make decisions on the fly on which winning tile combination to go for. Some of these are unconventional and break the rules of the 4 melts 1 pair hand. In addition to the previously mentioned 7 pairs, there's the infamous 13 orphans, where your hand has to contain 1 copy of all the terminal tiles, the honors, and an extra copy of any of the 13 tiles. These extremely rare hands are called yakuman, where going out with one will set your points to the maximum. Some of these are really weird, like all green, where your hand must only consist of green tiles, mainly the ones from the Soulzu suit and the Hatsu dragon tile. 9 gates, where your hand must consist of only 1 suit of tiles, and the arrangement has 3 copies of the terminal tiles, 1 copy of the other tiles, then another copy of any of the 9 tiles. There's Tenho, aptly translated as Heavenly Hand, where you're the dealer and the first tile drawn results in a winning hand. In Mahjong Soul, there's even unique animations when a player goes out with a Yakuman. I guess the original creators of Mahjong just randomly decided that these pattern hands deserve more points. Despite looking quite grandiose, winning with a Yakuman is actually extremely rare. According to this post documenting the win rates of Yakuman on Tenho, which is one of Japan's largest Riichi Mahjong hosting sites, even the most common of the Yakuman, 4 concealed triplets, only has a 1 in 2,456 occurrence. That's a 0.0004% rate. Turns out, drawing 4 triplets by yourself is much rarer than you think. Now that's real gacha. With all of the odds of the Yakuman combined together though, you never know, there's bound to be weird stuff that can happen. As you can see, even when you're taught the bare minimum, you have to consider the niche circumstances if your hand does start to resemble a Yakuman. So despite it being very unlikely, it can happen. For the most part, you have to consider if opening your hand is a good call, or if a drawn tile has a higher likelihood of forming a meld and progressing your hand. One such consideration is the wait. When you're in a tenpai state, waiting for the winning tile, you have to consider what tile you want to wait on. There's even names for the different types of waits, like if you're waiting on the second copy of the pair you have, or when you're waiting on 2 tiles that can either complete the triplet forming a meld, in which the other pair stays as the pair and wins the hand. You can have a double-sided wait where you can accept both ends of a sequence. Of course, it makes a lot of sense why waiting on 2 tiles is better than 1, but you also have to consider how many tiles of the one you're waiting on have already been played. You can even expand the analysis, where having 5 tiles in the sequence can give you a 3-sided wait, where tiles on either end or the middle can give you 2 sequences. There's a whole list of these scenarios that you could consider should you come across it. If you think a 3-sided wait is impressive, wait until you see a variation of the 9 gates Yakuman. If you're completed the set of the tiles and are just waiting on the extra copy, then you'll be at a 9-sided wait, being able to accept any of the 9 tiles. What about the 13-way wait for 13 orphans? If you have a unique copy of all the 13 tiles, then you'd be waiting on a copy for any one of them, putting you at a monstrous 13-way wait. Of course, these last 2 examples are extremely rare, but winning off those types of waits will score you even more points. Once you realize how to actually win a hand, the issue comes that you also need to know how to prevent other people from winning as well. Playing defensively is defined by only discarding tiles that you either know for sure or have a high chance that another player can't run off of. Here's the problem though. How are you supposed to know what's in the other player's hands? Well, this was the part that the machine analysis tool in Mahjong Soul was the most upset at me, because playing defensively involves reading the discard pile and analyzing the current state of the game, which is extremely hard to do in practice. There's a rule in Riichi Mahjong called Furiten, where you cannot go out by run when your weight contains at least 1 tile that you've already thrown away at some point, but you can still call Tsumo. This means, since the 3 other players are also bound to the same rule, discarding any tile that another player has already discarded is safe against them. Temporary Furiten exists when you pass up a tile that you could have run off of, and this would apply until your next turn. Knowing this, if you play the same tile that the player to your left just discarded, that tile is 100% safe for this turn only, because it's either not a winning tile for any players, or it is a winning tile but they just skipped it for some reason. Riichi Furiten entails that when you're in Riichi and passes up an opportunity to call Ron, then you can't Ron off any tiles for the rest of the game. Knowing this, when a player calls Riichi, then that tile and any tile that gets discarded afterwards is 100% safe against that same player. Because again, it's either not a winning tile, or it is a winning tile and they skipped it. Why on earth would you ever pass up an opportunity to win? Well, you're either a novice that don't know what you're doing, or you're an extremely high-level player that knows something the majority of other people don't. Such tiles bound to the rules of Furiten are called Genbutsu, meaning that they're 100% safe tiles to discard. However, there will be times when you have to discard a tile that's not fully safe, and this is where concepts like Suji and Kabe come in. Suji takes into consideration that two-sided weights are quite common, so if a player discards a 4 in the Pinzu suit, then the 1 ping would be safer to discard when defending against that player. This is because it considers that the player is not waiting on a two-sided weight of 2 and 3, so the 1 ping has a lower likelihood of dealing in. However, when you reach the higher levels, some players can set a Suji trap, where they purposefully discard a tile that's Suji to another, tricking you into thinking that it's safe. Plus, Suji doesn't make certain tiles completely immune. Kabe, or a literal translation of wall or barricade, takes into consideration that when all 4 of a tile are visible on the board, it makes certain weight patterns impossible, meaning that certain tiles are safer. This theory applies differently to what tiles in a suit are visible. Statistically, the 4 to 6 tiles of any suit have the highest likelihood of dealing in, since they're the middlemost tiles and are quite flexible. Now, practicing all these defensive tactics is the part that separates novices from pros. There's so many factors in the game that can make you decide whether to push by discarding tiles that you know aren't completely safe, or fold by disregarding your hand and only discarding the safest tiles to avoid dealing in. Maybe you're dead last and you need to win a hand to get back in the game. Maybe your hand is extremely valuable that it outweighs any risks. Maybe you suspect someone else's hand is valuable and you really don't want to deal into them. These weight reading tactics are outlined in the Mahjong Soul site but not in-game, if you ever want to learn about them. Armed with all of this knowledge, that's how I got started playing Mahjong. It's only a basic understanding of the intricacies of the game, but damn, there's something more within these silly tiles. We can now finally talk about Mahjong Soul and what makes its progression system unique. In Mahjong Soul, you can't level up your character or pull dupes of them to make them stronger, because that's the thing. There's no progression in the traditional sense. Your character avatar is just for cosmetic purposes. While you can give gifts and level up your bond for the sake of the game being a live service, you can't level up your tiles and make them worth more points somehow. While the game uses a gacha monetization model, the entirety of the gameplay portion is fully accessible, and other players can't gain advantages over you, unless you count having premium skins and emotes as an advantage. The most common currency in the game is copper, and you can use it to buy gifts and other things. The premium currency is called Jade and is used to pull on the cosmetics gacha. Unfortunately for you, getting Jade for free is basically impossible. I'll go through the rest of the gacha system next, but given that the entirety of the gameplay portion is free, it has to monetize through cosmetics, which will be pretty stingy. There's also no stamina system in the game, so you can play as much as you want. However, the machine analysis tool will restrict its use to 10 times a day unless you pay for the $5 sub. Not the biggest deal if you use the tool at all. There are daily missions in the game where you're usually just required to play some games and accomplish some feats. How your player rank progresses is determined by an MMR of sorts in ranked play. The ranks are tiered as follows: Novice, Adept, Expert, Master, Saint, and Celestial. Your rank also determines which lobbies you can play in, so you'll get matched up against players of similar skill level. Your points in your rank gets adjusted based on your placement when an entire game is over, where first place will be granted a lot of points, second place gets a little, third place loses a little, and the player in dead last loses a lot. Of course, just like what I said before, when you play in different lobbies, the point adjustments are more severe. So winning a game in the Jade Room will give more points, but losing will deduct more as well. Like a lot of Mahjong clients, this runs into the rather chaotic scenario that because high-level players are joining the game, then the bronze room may match you against other players that are not novices at all. It's unfortunately something you just have to deal with. The reason I bothered to level up to Adept rank is due to the game also giving you chests when you play in the silver room or above, which is kinda like a loot box of sorts that you can open to gain items to level up your bond with your characters. The higher level rooms actually give out better loot drops, so you're rewarded for becoming better at the game. By raising your bond, you can unlock new voice lines, or when you're fully at bond 5, you unlock the voice lines to read out the yakus when you actually win a game, whereas by default it's just silent. I should also take this chance to explain the rather hilarious situation when Mahjong Soul collabed with Blue Archive, where you could get some of the students from Blue Archive, except because the game has an affection system, some fans thought that the Mahjong Soul players were cucking them. Seems that the good old NTR debacle strikes again. So, how do you get new characters to use anyways? Well, this ties into the whole reason why this video could exist, so thank you for having a gacha system, Mahjong Soul. As said before, there's nothing locked gameplay-wise, and the main way the game can allow everyone to play for free is the cosmetics gacha. There are limited and permanent characters that you can have in your roster. It does nothing gameplay-wise, but since you can increase your bond to unlock more voice lines and illustrations, that's how the game makes its revenue to keep the servers going. Given that running the servers for a Mahjong client is dirt cheap, they just need a couple hungry whales to fund the game for everyone else. Seeing that it does break the top revenue every now and then, you can bet that the model is clearly working. And, well, a lot of overseas players play on the global version too. Here's how the banners work. In terms of the permanent banners, there are the Sakura and the Bamboo paths. Sakura for the female characters, Bamboo for the husbando enjoyers. At times, there will be special raid-up banners that either let you pick characters of your choice or just a singular one on raid-up. It costs 200 Jade for one pull, but a 10 pull has a small discount at 1800. Among the drops, your chosen raid-up character has a 59% raid-up chance and a 5% chance to pull a character at all. Among the lineup, you can also get other cosmetic items to make your game fancier, like skins for the Riichi stick, animations when you win off a tile, and change to the background music or unique tracks when you declare Riichi, because by default, the music just stays the same when you Riichi. The trash tier items include the gifts that you can use to level up your character's bond levels. The pity system is mileage based, where you get a faith token for every pull you perform, and with 150 of it, you can exchange for any character or 50 for any cosmetic item. To my understanding, faith points do carry over across all banners. Is there truly no ways to get pulls as a free-to-play? Not necessarily, they would just be extremely hard to come by, but I did find a way. When you get these gifts just for playing the game, you can donate the gifts for this glitter bottle token. Get 50 of those, and you can exchange for a summon ticket, but only 5 times a month. I'm sure the game might give a bit of freebies every now and then, but the gacha is essentially for players that care about the cosmetics. Now, to get the gifts to convert to the glitter bottles, you just have to play matches. As said before, playing in the silver room and above gives you loot boxes that drop random gifts. So you're encouraged to play at the rooms with the higher level players, since you'll get the loot box either way. While you can stay in the bronze room as an adept level player to try to fry the novices at the game, you don't get more gifts to advance your account. Alright, so I burned $15 so I can do a 10 pull to see what the gacha animation looks like. And I did get a character, just not the one I wanted. But anyways, that's what the gacha looks like. Given the low maintenance and lack of story, the game has done a lot of collabs over the years, mainly to attract newcomers that already know the franchise it's collabing with. Some of the more notable ones include Gintama, Fate Stay Night, Love is War, and Code Geass. If you ever wanted to hear Rin Tosaka calling cheese and pawns, now you can. Okay, well, you can't anymore since the collab's long gone, but you get the point. There's also new outfits for certain characters that you can buy with outfit vouchers. To my understanding, you also can't get any of this for free, at least not from what I've seen. But these outfits will cost you around $15 to $20. As for the cash shop, your best bet for getting Jade at max efficiency in terms of money is the $5 monthly, which will get you 300 upfront, then 60 every day for 30 days. This equates to 2100 Jades in total, which is enough for a 10 pull. As you can see, even just by paying the sub, it'll still take you a while to accumulate enough to hit the mileage pity. buying Jade directly will cost you a pretty penny. The lowest conversion I can find is the $15 pack that gives you 1800, which is just enough for a 10 pull, but this is with the first purchase bonus. Of course, the value of this is up to you. Whether you count cosmetics as gameplay is completely subjective. There's also a VIP system in the game, where spending money will grant you some gifts, a new title to use, and more bond points when playing matches. You still don't get gameplay advantages, so it's sorta just a nice bonus. I took a look and it seems that you get 6 VIP points for every dollar spent, so the final VIP tier will require around $3,000 to obtain. Which, if you compare it in terms of mobile gaming, is actually not a lot. There are people out there with disposable income that spending $3,000 on a video game is not that inconceivable these days. So, can you play the game without pulling on the gacha? Yeah, you can. Cosmetics are purely subjective, so if you don't care about it, Mahjong Soul is a good Mahjong client with some beginner-friendly tips and matchmaking system. If you do want to spend money on the game though, you're spending big. So I'm going to evaluate Mahjong Soul as a Mahjong client overall. The game has a lot of cool features in place to help you understand the board state better, like highlighting how many identical tiles are in play, what kind of weights you're on, and how Dora tiles will be lit up to let you know they're worth more points. When you're in the Furiten state, the game will let you know that you're not allowed to run off other discarded tiles, since in an actual real-life game, obviously no one can know what you have in your hand, and if you're found that you broke any rules, then there will be penalties. In online clients, you don't have to worry about it since the game will prevent you from breaking any rules. There's also the post-game analysis tool. You can review your own games and see how well you performed against the other players. You can view the other players' hands, go play by play, and the coolest feature will be the computer analysis tool, where it evaluates your play according to its systems and gives you a rank at the end. Of course, this sort of thing works for beginner level play since it uses a lot of stats to determine what plays were the most accurate, but when you get to the highly skilled players, then they will be able to tell that the machine has its own biases and may disagree with some of its choices. You can also spectate, but there's a 5-minute gap between the actual game and when you spectate, in order to prevent you from helping your friend stream snipe other opponents. Is there even a story mode in this game? Well, no, not really. Some events do introduce new characters in this Mahjong-themed world, and there's actually an anime series for the game as well, though it seems to be fairly averagely received. I do wonder how the hell you're supposed to make an anime series on Mahjong. There's some cool illustrations that you can actually unlock for free, except the tokens to get them will take you a while to accumulate. Aside from the highly critically plot-relevant artwork, there's no main campaign or side stories, though I'd be curious on how you'd be able to incorporate Mahjong into a story like that. Are there even events in the game? Yes, except if you're there to play Mahjong, anything outside of that is questionable if it even appeals to the majority of players. There is a tournament mode in the game with some unique rules, except I never got into that since trying to understand Mahjong is already tough enough. Some other Mahjong clients like Ricci City have even more spins. These modes are pretty fun, except Mahjong as a whole in the West isn't that popular, so it's appealing to a fairly niche crowd. This current event has a minigame that's mainly just Mahjong themed and you get rewards for playing one game per day. There's a permanent side mode where it's a bit more strategic, where you try to pick perks and score winning hands based on a wall of tiles, and it's sorta like a roguelike mode where you can see how much score you can accumulate. You can get free illustrations and some small cosmetics here and there, but don't expect anything in the way of a free character. Sometimes, a special game mode will get added to the tournaments tab, except you really can't make any core changes to Mahjong. So the main gameplay loop will remain exactly the same for all clients, and will probably stay that way until the end of time. My fascination with Mahjong started when I played Yakuza 0, and this little tabletop tile-based game is something I've always wanted to get into. Mahjong Soul is one of the few clients that has a fairly intuitive UI and tools to help you understand how to make better plays. It's monetized through a fairly stingy gacha where it's nigh impossible to get free pulls, except there is no stamina system, no upgrade system, and the entirety of the gameplay portion is open to anyone. Truly the most skill-based PvP gacha game I've seen so far. In any case, hopefully you understand that there's something more hidden behind these silly tiles, and now understand how a Mahjong client can work with the model of a gacha game. I imagine Ricci City will work in similar ways, and if you just want to play Ricci Mahjong without any gacha at all, then tenhole.net is also a valid choice, just that some features are locked behind a premium sub. Anyways, let me know if you're crazy enough to stick around all the way at the end. If you want to catch more content that's totally in line with gacha games like this one, subscribe to the channel. I just hope they make a chess gacha game next so I get an excuse to talk about that. You can support the channel for as little as $2 a month on Patreon. Thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and always remember, have fun out there.